let's get into this conversation. And we are joined by two gentlemen. One of them, to my immediate left, is Peter Rono. Peter Rono is a budget facilitator for the Rift Valley Budget Hub, which is associated with the Budgeti Hub. And we've had conversations with our gentleman from Budgeti Hub for a very long time. Yes. So Peter Rono is here. And to your right?
Of course, with me, I have Alexander Riithi. He is a Mwananchi budget expert. No, but I'm kidding. He is the head of programs at the Institute for Social Accountability, mnawajua kama TISA. And we'll continue to have these conversations with them. Let's do a Mwananchi budget. Let's figure out if this was a household budget, what would this kind of spending look like with numbers that we can relate to, so that we don't think of 4.2 trillion and think that that's a little money, or a lot of money. Auna a concept, right? I love my grain of rice analogies. Try to think of what 1 grain of rice looks like. Think of 1,000 grains of rice, 100,000. You're already at like piling.
Let me ask you. I think you've lost me.
Okay.
A plate
of rice
would ordinarily have how many grains of rice?
Okay, I'll send you a chat GPT. I'll be right back.
A spoonful of rice
would have how many?
Would have how many grains of rice? As you do that, let's talk to Alex. Alex, you are head of programs at TISA, and we know TISA. We've had conversations with TISA for a long time. At TISA, you do a lot of checking accountability of systems, of government, of community, right? At national level and at community level. When it comes to matters of budget, how exactly do you do this? How do you engage with citizens and those in leadership on matters of budget? Alex.
Okay, thank you, Latif, for having me this morning here in Nakuru. What we do at TISA when it comes to the budget, we participate in the budget process. As you may be aware, the budget process takes about 10 months in our country. And whenever Treasury issues it's an invitation for us to make our submissions, either on the fiscal budget, that is the revenue side, or now we have the budget estimates. We normally do our analysis and make our submissions to the National Assembly. Beyond that, we also go out and train the citizens and talk to them and educate them on what is in the budget, why does it matter for you, how are we financing our budget, because that is an issue of concern, given now the debt levels. And we always want to the citizens to understand that whatever happens at the national level affects you. Because if it's a finance bill that is increasing taxes for items that you use, it means that your money that is available for other purposes will go into those taxes. When it comes to the budget, it's also your responsibility as a citizen to ensure that whatever money has been allocated for a certain function, it goes there. And our vision is to, at some point, to have citizens so empowered so that they can themselves do social accountability to ensure that all the monies that are allocated by our government are utilized as expected.
Have you seen a change in citizen understanding and citizen engagement on matters of budget over the years?
Yes, we have seen a tremendous improvement. If you look at a good example is the finance bill that we are having this year. Out of the engagements that we have had between the finance bill of 2023 and the finance bill of 2024, you've seen the changes that we've seen in the current finance bill. Also, we've had citizens and other smaller civil society organizations at the local level doing social audits of particular functions, be they hospitals in their neighborhood and other projects that are dear to them. And now, every other Kenyan now is aware of our debt levels, because we've also been trying to advocate on reduction of our debt. And now, at the very least, if you ask any Kenyan whether we have debt, now they know that now it's 11 trillion and going up, and now everybody is concerned, and the issues of budget are now becoming easier and easier for citizens to understand.
Okay, let's come to you, Peter. So you're a budget facilitator in Rift Valley for the Rift Valley Budget Hub. What does a budget facilitator mean?
So, thank you, first of all, for this opportunity to be here today, to be part of the fixers of the nation. As a budget facilitator, this means that these are the people who are at the county level, with the primary objective of building the capacities of local citizens, using the language that is more relatable at that point. So we went through a training of 9 months, courtesy of Budget Hub, and we were commissioned, just like the way Jesus did the commissioning of the 12 disciples. So we went out here. Now we did the fishing. And I can say the way Alex has mentioned is that right now the gospel of the budget has gone. And we are seeing people appreciating it and now starting to engage. So that's the primary objective of the budget facilitator. At the Rift Valley Budget Hub, this brings together quite a number of budget facilitators from 10 counties across the former Rift Valley region, Rift Valley province. So from Turkana all the way to Narok. So our primary purpose is to build synergies across the counties and also to provide technical support to government, especially the county governments.
Right. Yeah. I want to look at now numbers that we can relate to.
Okay.
And I have a small, media brief. Think of yourself as having 2,760 shillings to spend.
Okay.
I think that's not a bad amount.
2,760.
Yes, 2,760 shillings that you have for your budget. It could be, let's say, your household budget for a week, a month, a day, depending on your spending.
Okay.
Different people, different spending, right? This 2,760 shillings, you can, I know in your head you've already started bangaing what to do with it, but let's pay some debts first. Let's do some obligations, some deductions, okay? You start with debt interest. Not debt, you're not paying the loan. It's the interest on the loan.
Okay.
Yes. So not the loan that you've taken that you're trying to pay back, just the interest on it. You pay 1,097 shillings out of that. Remember, you had 2,760.
Let me open the calculator. So
Yeah.
that when you do this- calculator, so that we do this easily. Hata calculator imepotea. Imesikia budget.
Imepasa baridi.
How much do I have?
You have 2,760.
60.
That's equivalent to our ordinary revenue that we're able to raise, I think, in the last financial year.
In this ending financial year.
Yes.
In optimistic, like in sawa.
In thousands as opposed to
Sawa.
billions and trillions.
Interest payment?
Interest payments ni 1,097 shillings.
1,097. Okay.
Utoe. Then utoe constitutional offices and pensions at 240 shillings.
240.
So think about...
That's the first charge, those two.
Yeah, first charges. Constitutional offices and pensions, you're putting aside something for the future and something to protect yourself now and your independence. Kitu, almost call it insurance of a sort, if you're trying to think of it in a homely way.
Okay.
Aya. Salaries for public servants.
Okay.
So think about the people that you employ in your home, the people that take care of your children, that clean your house, the people that work for you. 900 shillings.
900.
County allocations. Tuseme tu ya watoto, something to give the children, pocket money. 405 shillings.
405.
Then less half of pending bills, because there's people who have given you services, they have supplied you with products, wamekuletea nyama, wamekuletea mahindi, wamekuletea mafuta. Ukasema,
I have 118 bob left, by the way, as we talk. So please now do the math. Nakumbuka sijakula nyama, hata sijakunywa chai.
is your math correct? Hold on. We're supposed to start with 235 shillings.
We start again?
No, yeah, let's start again.
Negative.
We're already negative.
We're already in the negatives. Okay.
Let's start again.
760.
2,760.
Less 1,097.
Minus 1,097. Is equals 1,663.
Yeah.
Minus
Less 240 shillings.
240. Is equals 1,423.
Yeah.
Minus
900.
900.
Yeah.
This was the salaries
For public servants.
everybody.
Yes.
Is equals 523.
Ooh. Minus county allocations.
Minus 400.
And 5.
405. And Nakuru. Is equals
118.
118.
Then you had pending bills that you needed to pay. You're only doing half because you can't do all of them. That's 353.
Minus 300
And 53.
and 53.
Yeah.
How do I do 118 minus 353?
You'll get negative 235. Hapo ndio tunaanzia.
What does that mean, Mr. Budget?
Yeah.
So So first thing.
Where is my money?
Your money is already used. So, because when you talked about having a deficit in a budget, it either means that you're not living within your means, first of all. Because in our budgets, we only envision to have zero budgets, so that we can be able to achieve what we want to do. So as for me, as a local citizen, looking at having a negative of around 235, that means either I have to work extra hard to get an extra living so that I could cater for the deficit that is there. Another thing also is either to go back to another revenue raising measure. That could be I have to get an extra loan again, which will be an extra burden to me. That will mean again I might not be able...
Peter, wait. Let's just be clear.
Yes.
That all this math that Mariam has made us do,
Yeah.
I have spent money and I have I'm in debt, 235 in just payment. Hapa sijakunywa hata chai.
Acha.
Okay. So now you're saying now this is leading us into a deficit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So how do we bridge this? Now, in our budget, in all this expenditure, there should be development.
True.
Right?
Yes.
And development is where we say how we shall build schools, how we shall build infrastructure, how we shall, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Right? So if our revenue cannot even pay the things that we need to be spending on, hatuwezi lipa salaries, hatuwezi patia pesa counties ndio zirun, hatuwezi lipa deni, hatuwezi lipa pension, hatuwezi lipa nini. It means that we are living beyond our means, like you've said.
It's true, yeah.
So two options. One, we go and borrow so that then we borrow ndio tuweze kununua nyama, tukule nyama leo siku. Or we fire some of these people.
Yes, sadly, that is the situation. Because when you look at how the government is structured, we can borrow for development. So the development budgets, the law allows us to do so. But what we have seen in practice is that we have seen government borrowing for recurrent expenditure, which is against the law. So what we'll need maybe going forward is we look at our priorities as a country. Where are we as a country? Do we still need to have these big budgets that we want to have? Or we work within the means where we can? Right. Because again, the budget means that it will affect how our incomes, how we get money. And that also automatically is transferred to the local mwananchi who will bear the cost. The cost of the repayments of the loans will be borne by us as Kenyan citizens.
I'm thinking of it, and that's why I tried to make it as relatable as possible. Yeah. You guys did a great job of giving us, sums of money that we're familiar with. Because to be honest, we've agreed billions, trillions, they go over our heads. But let me ask Alexander, this 2,760 shillings that I have to spend, of these things, because we've taken away debt interest, we've not paid the debt principal, just the interest. Constitutional offices and pensions, salaries, pending bills. Where can I get reprieve there? Assuming it was my household budget, I had 2,760. I have debts that I have to pay. I have future, obligations or insurances and current protections, I would call that I need to pay for. I have salaries for the people that work in my home, and I have children that I'm taking care of. I also have bills with suppliers. Where can I cut costs? Because all of those things seem extremely important to pay.
Thank you. We did work on this analysis, and we tried to reduce the numbers so that anybody who is looking at them would understand.
Right.
Just to go back a bit, the 2,760 is basically 2.76 trillion. What we are anticipating that we will collect in ordinary revenue in the fiscal year 2025, 2026. Hopefully. And I like the use of that word.
In the next fiscal year.
In the next fiscal year. And the reason why, and I like your word hopefully, this particular year, we have missed our targets of revenue collection by 253 billion already.
Alexander, what?
Yes.
We've missed our target.
We've missed our target.
Who could have foreseen this?
At supplementary 2, we brought down our revenue estimations to around 2.58 trillion.
Yes.
We are likely to bring it further down to around 2.4 in the supplementary 3 that is happening for this financial year. The reason why I bring us back is to paint a picture that if this financial year we are likely to close at 2.4 trillion if we are doing well on ordinary revenue, then how do we then anticipate that we are going to raise around 300 billion extra. In the next financial year? That if, as it was beginning, didn't indicate that the current finance bill we are told is likely to raise an additional 35 billion. So if we close at 2.4 or thereabout, the only additional amount that we expect in the next fiscal year is 35 billion. So the math that we have done now presupposes that this number of 2.7 trillion is a number that we will get to. In the event that we don't get to that number, which is highly likely looking at our history, then this negative 235 that we are talking about here will even be higher. Now, you asked how now do we get reprieve from this? I will go back to a phrase that has been used out there by poets, that when you realize you're in a pit, the first thing you should do is stop digging. Then start figuring out how do I get out of this. But when you look at the budget as it is, we are not seeing that analogy working. Because ordinarily we would expect we go into a phase where we start reducing on our expenditures. But instead of that, we've seen an increase of the number of state departments by around 7. And these 7 new state departments come with heavy administrative costs. These monies that are going into the administrative costs would have helped us provide services, education, health, and the like. So what we are seeing and what has been proposed as the budget went to the National Assembly, it went in with a deficit of around 876.1 billion. My reading of the Budget and Appropriations Committee report that was tabled last week indicates that we have had a slight increase in expenditure of about 47 billion. So that only tells me that then the deficit that went in of 876 billion is only likely to be higher because the revenues have not changed much. So that is just to paint a picture of where we are.
So we're still digging.
In my view,
in the pit and
we are still digging, and I think we are even digging harder because if you look at now a deficit of 876, which is likely to be higher, by the time we close the financial year in June of next year, I do not see the reason why we wouldn't have crossed the 1 trillion mark in terms of deficit.
We clearly did.
And looking at the current debt stock of 11 trillion, by the time we close the next fiscal year, we will be somewhere in the 12 trillion number.
Let's breathe. Let's take a break. Breathe and come back and continue this conversation. Alex is asking, Jimmy Gakeo rather is asking, how much is a trillion? We're still in that. We're still stuck there.
Oh, so
how much?
I'll tell you using the grains of rice when we come back.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Alexander Riithi is our guest. He's head of programs at the Institute for Social Accountability. Peter Rono is a budget facilitator, the Rift Valley Budget Hub. Both of them, together with Okwa Uchumi, are facilitating us to be here today. We are partnering with them so we can have a budget conversation on this Thursday that the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury will be presenting the budget statement before Parliament. Fixing the nation, one conversation at a time, one grain of rice at a time, 1 shilling to 4.29 trillion conversations later. Back in a moment. Right? Now, we're having our budget conversation today, and even from 8 a.m. we'll be engaging with the residents of Nakuru to hear from them on the matters of budget, and some of them are already here. Salimiani Raya from wherever, one of the cameras will turn at some point and we'll just be showing people to say that, yes, we have an audience here, and they will be speaking to the nation and telling them what they think about the budget. As they're here, you can raise your hand, you can say hello, Ivo, tukiendelea. Alex Riithi and Peter Rono are here with us as panelists, head of programs at TISA and budget facilitator at the Rift Valley Budget Hub. I want to come back to you, Peter. When you engage with citizens on matters of budget and you're explaining that these are the issues, that these are the areas, and just like Alex was telling us, we have seen the revenue raising measures, we've seen the gaps in the raising revenue. Do people concentrate on how much we allocate to programs? Is there as much focus on the revenue raising as there is on the expenditure?
Yeah, I think both do stand, because also people are very keen and concerned in terms of how they receive services, because government exists to ensure that people receive services, especially the ECOSOC rights under Article 43. As well as also people are also concerned, as much as you are giving us services, what you are taking out of our pockets is also a big concern. Because what we have seen lately is that much is going out, but we are not feeling the impact of what we are giving. So that's the challenge that we always have in the community. They're very concerned. But I think that also motivates them now to try and understand what is all about budget. Then when we stand and say that we are foreseeing a deficit of this much, then what does that mean for health services, let's say, for example, in Molo? Yeah? And also, we try to ensure that we make it relatable to their needs or to their issues. For instance, right now, the county is struggling with healthcare. Yeah? One of the major factors that we have seen around Nakuru is, for instance, the drugs.
Yeah.
And when you also look at what the finance bill does around that, it's also a contradiction. So also people have to...
Wait, a contradiction at what sense, Peter?
So when you look at in terms of the exemptions that are there.
Yes.
Yeah, especially for the inputs for making the drugs. We note that they're about to go slightly high.
Right.
Yeah.
They're being moved from zero rating to exempt.
To tax exemption. That will mean that the cost
would go
likely will go high, and that will be passed now to the consumers, who is us. Then again, that brings an understanding to the community now to start realizing now how do the budget work. It has to have an income as well as also has to have an expenditure. So where we are putting our money is a big challenge for the country at the moment.
Right, where we are putting our money, where we are getting our money from, how we are collecting. I think over and over again you hear from economists, from budget experts, from civil society that we have a spending problem, not a money problem. When you look at the spending cuts, you talked about a few of the, like increasing state departments, things like that. But are there ways we could genuinely spend this 2,760 shillings that we're able to raise and take it to the essential sectors of the economy without having to borrow, without having to borrow internally or externally? Yes, let me put it like that.
Where we are, if you look at the expenditure side, and I think as a coach, we've been very vocal in saying that Kenya does not have a revenue problem. What we have is an expenditure problem. And our argument is, if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, our revenue in nominal terms, that is in terms of numbers, has been increasing every other year. We collect more this year than we had collected last year. But the rate at which our revenue is growing is slower than the rate at which our expenditure is growing.
Unaongezewa 5K kwa mshahara, unahama nyumba ya 35.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the argument.
Sawa.
Uko na tank, mfereji ya kuingiza maji ni ya half an inch, ya kutoa ni ya 1 foot. So that's the challenge that we are having. So, and in our view, we could reorganize the way we have our expenditures. And I think somebody has already gone to court on some of these issues where we have the number of advisors, for instance, advising the president. I think there are 21 or something like that. If you recall, last year, one of the promises we were given after the problems we had is that the number of advisors is going to be halved. So these expenditures that come with what I would call a bloated government are the ones that are getting us into more problems. And if you recall, when we got into the IMF program, one of the things that the IMF did was to encourage us to increase our revenue-raising measures. And that is where we went.
Encourage is a nice choice of words.
I'm just
very,
trying to be
very
friendly.
diplomatic.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
That is where we went with the Finance Bill of 2023, and that is the direction we were taking with the Finance Bill of 2024. But now we've come to a realization that I think, in my view, and many experts have the same view, that we have raised our taxes to a level where now raising additional tax rates does not equal additional revenue, and that is what sparked the noise that was there last year. And I think even government has seen it this time around, because if you look at the finance bill this year, it has avoided bringing in new taxes, but it is now working around moving these items from here to there. Administratively, there are some challenges that we are going to have, like what Rono has mentioned, moving inputs for medicaments from zero-rated to tax-exempt, inputs for livestock feeds, raw materials, and so on. So some of these provisions, they might seem very safe, given that we don't have like a motor vehicle circulation tax or a nickel levy or those
the ones that got
we were
us
seeing
riled up last year.
Those things we were seeing last year. But in our view, when we go into implementation of this movement, that is when we are going to have to actually see the impact that this is going to have on consumer prices. Because when you move inputs for medicaments from zero-rated to tax-exempt, it means the input VAT that is used for the inputs that you use for coming up with the medicine will be transferred to the consumer. And these, I like coupling it with other provisions in the bill. If you look at now what we are doing in the excise duty, we are also now increasing excise duty on packaging material from 25 to 35%. If you now focus on the same line of medicine, you hit it on the VAT side, then you hit it again on the excise.
Already 16% on VAT?
16% on inputs.
And then
about 10% on packaging material. That means that you have increased the cost by around 10 or 15% or thereabout. So it means anybody who is on terminal, who has a terminal illness, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, and so on, their cost of purchasing medicine will go up. And now these again...
Even short-term illness, ata yo...
Yeah. Ata homa, Panadol, and everything, you will see them going up. But now, the converse of that is you look at what happened at the beginning of this year in the health sector. We had the US government pulling out some of its resources, especially on HIV, and now we have this problem that is looming on vaccines. This, again, is going to affect you, mwananchi, directly, especially those who are suffering from some of those illnesses.
I'm trying to think of the policy thoughts behind some of these moves, and I think largely because of last year, the move this year was, you know what, we can't introduce any new taxes, right? Let's clean up our revenue collection. Let's find any loopholes. Let's close those. I want to just ask you, just Rono, Alexander, honestly, who are the tax cheats that are really costing us proper revenue? And I don't mean by name, by sector, you know what I mean? I want to know, because this attempt to clean up, again, is still going after the same people who, yes, last year's, for example, pay increases went after. You know, it's largely the consuming and the working class people of Kenya. So I'm wondering, where are who is not paying their taxes? Who could we actually be going after? He's already,
Maybe to try and respond to that. The person who claims back input VAT is not the consumer, definitely. It is somebody higher up in the value chain at production level. So when now and the argument we've had from government is there has been misuse of the refund system. I don't know how true that is, but government maybe has enough data. I don't have it. But now, what we are doing, yes, we are dealing with that part of the problem, where now we try and reduce what is called tax expenditure, because I think our tax expenditure had gone all the way to about 300 billion, which had even almost exceeded the amount of money that we take to counties and the like.
Let me, to bring it closer, this is refunds that are given to manufacturers on the inputs they spend to make a certain thing.
These are refunds that are given to manufacturers against input VAT that they get when you have a zero rating of an item. But now, by trying to cure that problem, which is good, because again, we don't want our money going into people's pockets while it should have been used for services. But let us look at the converse problem that we are creating. We are now, because that cost has to be paid by somebody, we are transferring that cost to the consumer.
Is there a way where you could clean up, I don't think it's rocket science, to clean up, for example, these VAT refunds and only have it that legitimate businesses are getting their VAT refunds, people who have actually used local inputs or used whatever inputs are, required, and they're the ones claiming for this money back?
I do believe between KRA and Treasury, they should have enough mechanisms of identifying this is that if the inputs that they purchase to produce this is this much, therefore this refund is beyond what is required, and then we turn them back. It's possible. But now, if you're curing a problem by creating another, that is where now we have a serious issue.
So away from the VAT and the excise duty refunds, I'm looking at an aspect of tax education. Is the government doing enough to sensitize us as citizens on the importance of us paying our taxes? And I think
even the procedure.
Even the procedure. What we have left for us to do is to try and think, now how can I go about it? Rather than helping us to understand. The only statement that I've came across is kulipa ushuru kujitegemea. But now that again doesn't convince me as to why I need to pay my taxes. And I think that's why you see possibly our country is not able to meet our revenue targets, because if I'm not seeing service delivery, it's not convincing me as to why I need to pay. But again, education also comes in hand to help us now to see the reason why I need to pay my taxes so that I can be able to get service delivery.
So it's a connection between I'm paying tax and I'm getting the service. I'm seeing the value for it, right?
Yes, true.
Is it education that's needed, or is it just the government doing the right thing? Because you don't need to teach me that because I paid I'm walking to hospital and walking back home, having received services, that I am no longer in WhatsApp groups where we are contributing for relatives, for friends, for relatives of friends, just so that they can access healthcare. That I am no longer spending so much time moving from here to another place because the road is dilapidated, and so on and so forth. I don't even need education for that, Rono. Senior, I just need the service.
Look at the segment of people here. When you go down either to Mamboga and those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, at times all they can do, all they can relate is what they are able to see.
Yes.
Yeah. But for us who are the middle class and onwards, it has to be something that we know. That we have an obligation that we need to pay. But for common citizens, you have to bit sensitize them, because already the system, the way people understand the system, it is. So you have to kind of bring an understanding, that including how we are supposed to pay, because one of the challenge again is how do we pay for these taxes. You could be willing, but again, you don't know what you need to pay,
Yep.
when to pay,
Yep.
and where to pay. So basically, education comes at that point to bring us to the to being compliant.
Just understanding tax and how to be compliant. And compliant, and also making it simple and cheap. Because I think the cost of compliance, Rono, you'll agree with me, must be very high. Just for you to understand, to acquire that knowledge is a cost. For you to comply, even just going by the example of you're a big manufacturer, and you are buying all these inputs, and you're paying VAT against all those inputs, and then at this particular point you want to claim. They have to hire departments just to deal with claims and refunds.
Even as a small enterprise, think of, you should be able to file your own taxes as a small, medium,
Easily,
but you'd have to, but for most people, you have to hire someone. That is a cost of compliance. I think of all these things, and you've spoken very well to it, Rono. I do wonder if it's intentionally bad and hard. And I don't know who it benefits for it to be. Actually, I do know who it benefits.
That's interesting.
When you're unable to comply, you now start looking for shortcuts, right?
And then there's a facilitator.
There's a facilitator for that shortcut. I think so. When you're unable to, for example, log on to eTIMS or file your taxes, or you don't know whether this 16 VATs can be claimed, whether as an individual do I pay VAT, who does that benefit? It's the person you go to seek help from, but I don't know, maybe I'm
You
just...
have a point, by the way. You hear very many people who complain that in a bid to comply, their touch point with KRA officials will not be facilitating them to comply. It will be introducing roadblocks and introducing alternatives to compliance, which will not be compliance, right?
Yeah, true.
So we have a beneficiary.
From the way I look at things, sometimes the system happened by design, depending on the beneficiary, who is the beneficiary of this. And I think both of you have spoken to these. But when you look at principle of taxation, talks about the issues of simplicity.
Right.
Yeah. It has to be simple to the extent that an ordinary person can be able to do it from the comfort of where they are. Actually, you don't have to go to KRA to be able to either do the filing, or you get the third party to help you do so, because again you will be incurring an extra cost. So for me, maybe going forward is that we adopt the principles of taxation.
Yeah. Just give us the stuff, because in tax regimes where things work, we're going on a break. So simplicity as a principle of taxation. Another one? Relatability. Predictability, yes. You should be able to know, not every day, leo ni 10%, kesho ni 15. This year, next.
I think that there are 2 extra.
Okay, should not be punitive. I know there's something about...
It should also be equitable.
Equitable, that's the word. Okay, equitable. There you go. We're going on a break now. We'll be back, of course, with some residents of Nakuru discussing e-budget ya mwananchi, and also we'll talk about higher education, funding, defunding, everything in between. Alex and Rono will still be with us, of course, as we get on the ground. But ground iko tu hapa. We'll be right back. Hashtag is Fixing the Nation and TV. Say hi, guys.